You know that person who is clearly drowning, deadlines piling up, exhausted eyes, barely holding it together, and when you ask them if they need help, they smile and say, "I'm fine, I've got it." That person might be you. And if it is, you probably felt a small tightening in your chest just now. The specific kind that shows up when something gets too close to a truth you've been quietly managing for years. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that needing people was dangerous. Let's dissect what's actually going on. There's this assumption that people who never ask for help are just proud, stubborn, maybe even a little arrogant. And sure, for some people that's part of it. But for most, and I mean the vast majority who genuinely struggle to reach out, it's more than just pride or stubbornness. More like a survival strategy that worked once upon a time, but then never got updated. Let's think about that for a sec. At some point in your life, probably when you were pretty young, you reached out. You showed someone you were struggling. And what happened? Maybe they dismissed you. They got frustrated. Or they were just unavailable, physically, emotionally, whatever. And your nervous system, which is extraordinarily good at pattern recognition, logged that. Needing people leads to disappointment, or worse, rejection. So you adapted. If they couldn't help you, you'd help yourself instead, right? You became the capable one that figures it out, the one who doesn't make other people uncomfortable with your needs. And the sad reality is that adaptation probably served you incredibly well for a long time. What will catch you off guard, though, the inability to ask for help is more than a behavioral observation. It's become woven into how you perceive yourself. Researchers have actually studied this phenomenon. A 2008 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology by Flynn and Lake found that people dramatically underestimate how willing others are to help them by almost a whopping 50% in some experiments. We walk around genuinely believing that asking is more burdensome than it actually is. But even knowing that statistic doesn't make it easier to ask, since there's this emotional barrier rather than an informational one. When you've spent years, sometimes decades, building an identity around not needing help, asking for it doesn't feel like a simple transaction, but a threat to who you are. Like if you admit you can't handle this, the whole image collapses. The competent, self-sufficient one that people rely on, gone. So instead, you run on fumes, stay up too late solving problems alone that a 5-minute conversation could have resolved. You tell yourself you'll ask when things get really bad, but really bad keeps getting redefined because your threshold for suffering quietly just keeps rising. And the cruelest part of all of this, the more competent you become, the more invisible your struggle becomes to everyone around you. It's a cycle. People stop checking in because you always seem fine, since you've trained them to believe that. There's also something quite specific that happens in relationships, romantic ones, friendships, family, for people who can't ask for help. They often give a lot, genuinely, not always consciously, but there's a dynamic at play where giving feels safe and receiving feels exposing. Giving keeps the power balanced in a way that feels manageable. Like if I'm the one helping you, I'm not vulnerable, I'm needed, and being needed is the closest thing to secure attachment some people have ever known. But it creates this invisible ledger. Over time, the relationship becomes lopsided in a way that neither person fully understands. The giver starts to feel unseen, and the other person might feel vaguely guilty without knowing why. Yet the giver can't say anything because, well, asking for more feels impossible, as we've established. So they either quietly resent or quietly leave. Okay, and I want to say something directly to the people watching this who are nodding along knowing they have this pattern, and who are maybe slightly frustrated because they've known for years and it hasn't changed. Knowing why you do something doesn't automatically change it. That's just how deep conditioning works. However, insight is the beginning of change. John Bowlby, whose attachment theory is foundational to most modern trauma psychology, spent years documenting how early relational experiences create what he called internal working models, essentially mental templates for how relationships work, what we can expect from others, and crucially, whether our needs are worth meeting. These models form early and run quietly in the background, but they're remarkably resistant to simple logic. which means telling yourself it's irrational to not ask for help, while true, is about as effective as telling someone with a fear of heights that falling is statistically unlikely. The rational mind knows, but the nervous system simply doesn't care. What actually starts to move the needle for people is something more gradual and a lot less dramatic than most transformation content suggests. It's not a single breakthrough moment, it's repeated experiences of asking for something small and surviving it, of noticing that the person didn't pull away, and most importantly, they weren't burdened, that you are in fact still whole after being seen as someone who needed something. It's also about grief, which sounds strange at first, but a lot of people who never ask for help are carrying grief they haven't named for a younger version of themselves who did ask and wasn't met. And until that gets acknowledged somewhere in the body and not just the mind, the old strategy sticks around. It was protecting someone, that you in the past, so it needs to be thanked before it'll step aside. The identity piece is enormous too. When I handle things myself has been load-bearing for your sense of self-worth for 30 years, it's more than a habit. Dismantling it doesn't mean you lose yourself. You're rebuilding with better materials, one that includes the radical, genuinely difficult idea that your needs are not a burden, that depending on people is not weakness, and the capacity to receive is just as mature as the capacity to give. Most of us were never taught that, and you can't learn what was never shown to you. Picture this. You're at work, you've taken on more than you can realistically handle, and a colleague notices. They stop by your desk and say, "Hey, do you want me to take something off your plate?" And something strange happens. You feel a flash of, not relief, panic, almost offense, even though they meant nothing by it. You say, no, I'm good, thanks though," and then spend the next 4 hours silently resenting the workload while also feeling oddly proud that you didn't accept help. Later that night, you're exhausted, maybe a little hollow, and you can't quite name why. It's not about productivity. That's a story you're living inside of, one that says accepting help means something about you that you're not willing to accept. So if this is you, if you watched this and felt the particular ache of being described, I want to leave you with this. The strength you developed by doing everything alone is real, and it got you here, but it was always meant to be a bridge, not a destination. You were not built to carry everything alone. I mean, nobody is. And the people in your life who would show up for you, they do exist. You've just been so good at not needing them that they don't know you need them. That's not their failure or yours, but perhaps the next thing to work on. I hope you'll find a lot more value with my other Psychology Simplified videos on the screen now. Subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already, and hit the join button if you want to keep these psychology deep dives going. Much appreciated.